Ships are meant to be on water, not in the water.
The northern Red Sea is known for wrecks.
This is the shipwreck that people dream about.
One of the most famous shipwrecks in the world, the Thistlegorm.
The first thing you see is this machine gun just sitting there.
The best dive I've ever done, probably the best dive I will ever do. Previously on Jump In.
Traveling around Cairo, seeing the Sphinx, the pyramids, seeing the Hidden Valley of Kings, everything that we've seen has been phenomenal. Our first dives in Egypt, unbelievable. But now, our next day, we're doing these shipwrecks, and we're just so excited to get in the water and go and investigate these ships.
If I got to pick any dive in the world to do, it would be a shipwreck. I'm really excited because the northern Red Sea is known for wrecks. So this week, we get to dive all kinds of different wrecks.
Time to jump in!
Wreck diving is probably my favorite type of dive. A lot of the wrecks end up being like artificial reefs, so you still see a lot of life, but you also see man-made objects from a time period that was long ago.
In Nova Scotia, obviously, we're no stranger to diving shipwrecks. We're literally in the graveyard of the Atlantic. I mean, look, the Titanic is not even that far offshore. The Halifax, which is a famous shipwreck.
Traveling somewhere like Egypt and getting to dive on another war wreck. It just ties it all together, and it makes you see how similar diving is all around the world.
The Red Sea had so many wrecks. I don't think I've ever done that many wrecks in such a short amount of time. There was one kind of shallow reef that was a destroyer of wrecks. When navigation wasn't used by GPS and when it was more difficult to navigate the seas, this shallow reef ended up being a graveyard for a lot of wrecks.
When we arrived at the scuba scene, we met this lady called Elka.
My name is Elke. I'm German. I'm part of the guiding team this week.
And if you're a female in diving, you're always looking for female role models. And Elka is, oh my gosh, she's so knowledgeable. She would do our dive briefings, and she was the person that if you had a question about this dive that you're doing, you would go and ask Elka. The first shipwreck that we did was called the Ulysses. And we're just so excited to get in the water.
So we're going to take the speedboats now, so we're going to sort you into different speedboat groups.
The Ulysses was a cargo ship that was traversing south from the Suez Canal, going all the way to Penang, Vietnam in 1887. They ran aground on the coral reefs in the early hours of the night. And now the Ulysses is sitting on its port side. And a lot of the structure has rusted away. The iron materials that it was made of are exposed. The reality is that shipwrecks can pose many, many hazards, and it can be very dangerous to dive around a shipwreck, and especially to penetrate and go inside of a shipwreck without proper training.
There's so many different things that you have to be aware of when you're diving, whether you're experienced or whether you're a beginner. Anybody, myself included, can make a mistake.
When you're diving a wreck, there's that overhead environment, and you want to have your buoyancy in check, know where you're at, know where you can get out.
The second wreck we dove was the S02E09.
Because it's such a new shipwreck to that area, it was only 1983, it really wasn't that long ago. It's one of the best conserved shipwrecks in the area.
Ships are meant to be on water, not in the water. It's very weird to see it underwater because now it's like a sunken kind of eerie thing. It's a really cool cargo ship. There's so much life, so much coral. Again, you're just like, I'm in an aquarium.
These wrecks that we're diving, most of them hit coral reef, and that's why they're laying on the bottom. And I guess now that leaves us something to explore.
What's really cool with a shipwreck, it does create an artificial reef, so you'll see a lot of life and a lot of coral that have grown and attached themselves to these ships. It's very interesting for us to see how that's helped create this atmosphere that these fish have just adapted to and live in. The next shipwreck is the Crisula Cay. And this one's really unique because it had 3,700 tons of Italian tiles.
So you swam inside of the ship, and once you got in there, you kind of saw these like bundles of tile, and you could sweep away some of the dirt that was on top of them, and they almost had little designs in them. It was very cool.
It took all of my strength and power not to collect a tile just to bring it up as a souvenir for treasure, because I love treasure hunting, but I was like, fish have made their homes in this. They're not damaging the environment. They're actually being beneficial because they're helping the marine life. Jennifer, leave the tile. So that's what I did. The cool thing with this shipwreck too is that when you went, it was almost like a swim through. So you would go into the wreck in the back, and then you could swim up, and as you swim up and you come out, you have this huge wall of just like coral and fish. Our next shipwreck that we were doing is called the Yolanda.
Okay, bye. One, two, three, go.
The Yolanda shipwreck ran aground on a coral reef in 1980, and for 5 years it sat in relatively shallow water until a few years later a big storm came through and actually pushed it basically off the shelf in the ocean, and then when it slid off this ocean shelf into the depths, a lot of the materials were left behind.
So we dove the Yolanda wreck, which was transporting a bunch of toilets.
everything was everywhere. It was so spread out that you would find a cluster of toilets in one area, you'd swim 100 feet and there would be tubs, you'd swim 100 feet in another direction, there'd be more toilets.
We've seen some pretty weird stuff in our days of diving and in our adventures, but I will say hundreds of toilets is up there on the list. That's one of the weirdest things we've ever gotten to see.
I don't know why, but Julia, for some reason, always thinks things to do with toilets are funny.
So we were diving, and next thing you know, there's like hundreds of toilets scattered on the ocean floor. and we're like taking turns kind of like pretending to sit on the toilet. It was just really funny. Like, you never know what you're gonna find on the ocean floor. Sometimes it's beautiful tropical fish, and sometimes it's a toilet.
So after a great day of diving these amazing shipwrecks, we spent the evening relaxing on the boat and building our excitement for the next day of diving one of the most famous shipwrecks in the world, the Thistlegorm. The next morning, Elke gave us a very detailed and comprehensive dive briefing about the Thistlegorm shipwreck.
She goes in and she explains like the different areas to go in and swim, where you can penetrate the wreck, what you'll see, how deep you should go.
There's wide open passages. Some of the passages on top of the cargo. It's not super high, but it's still comfortable.
This is the shipwreck that people dream about. It is like the creme de la creme. This is the bee's knees of shipwrecks. You jump off the boat and you follow a line and you go down. And the first thing you see is the deck of the boat. And then all you see is like this machine gun just sitting there. And I'm like, whoa, that's cool.
The size of the boat was just huge.
Like 416 feet long. It's like 126 meters.
The SS Thistlegorm was a military ship that was carrying military goods.
So the Thistlegorm was equipped with all sorts of military supplies. They had tanks, they had trucks, they had motorcycles, they even had a locomotive.
The ship itself sank in 1941 after it was bombed by a German air attack. So all of the military goods that it had on board sunk with it.
It's very much like the coolest wreck you'll ever dive.
There is a very small list of shipwrecks that are well known around the world. We have thousands and thousands of boats that are laying on the bottom of the ocean. But to be considered on this very short list to divers, I mean, the Thistlegorm would be like going to dive the Titanic.
It was definitely the longest shipwreck that I've ever got to explore. We kind of went around the starboard side, and you could literally see like ladders going up to different levels of the deck.
And then you follow along down the side of the boat, and that's when you see the trains and things around the boat. And I can understand now why Elka said, really watch your time, because how often are you gonna see a train underwater? Never. And you get so distracted by what you're seeing that you could really lose track of your decompression limits and your depth and how long you're there. So it's really important to pay attention. You want to stay down there for 5 hours, and you just want to explore every nook and cranny.
When you dive shipwrecks, you often do have an overhead environment. So if something were to happen, you can't just go straight up. So we had to take some extra care when penetrating this wreck because there were sharp bits as well as that overhead environment just above us.
As you go in and actually explore, it's just bananas. It's like, I don't even have words to describe how freaking cool this wreck is.
The penetration point was in the middle of the hull where the bomb sunk the ship. It opened up a nice area in the middle to then be able to enter and slowly make your way around the different holds and levels of this wreck.
So we entered into the Thistlegorm, and you spend so much time inside of this wreck. We were almost an hour inside of the wreck.
So there was a lot of different levels of cargo holds, and in the cargo holds is where you can see what the Thistlegorm is famous for. These massive vehicles and motorcycles still standing up that are completely intact still. Obviously the sea has claimed it and there's a lot of growth on them.
There were tires down there that are taller than me. I'm 5 feet, and the tires were bigger than I am. It was just like mind-blowing. Everything about this wreck was absolutely mind-blowing. It's kind of a crazy feeling because you can see the light coming down from the water, but then you go in this section and it's just dark. So you're like flashlight and you're like, okay, now what do I want to look at? You'll turn, Jeep. And then you're like diving along and you turn and turn again, motorcycle. And it's just strips and strips of motorcycles. You just don't know what you're gonna hit.
Diving the Thistlegorm was like diving an underwater military museum.
And kind of spread out in between the motorcycles and the Jeeps and the tanks are shoes. The people on board did not know it was going down, so to see their shoes still sitting on the bottom and see kind of these signs that were once life is a really surreal feeling. I mean, that takes a museum to a whole new level.
Sometimes when you know the history of a ship, especially in that context, like a warship, it does make things a little bit spooky. And when you're in the cargo holds inside the shipwreck, it's quite dark. You need your light to be able to see clearly. You're also constantly reminded of the fact that there were people on the ship, and the ship has a whole story attached to it. You have these constant reminders of the human history that has been left in these places, while also seeing that all sorts of marine life have made these shipwrecks their home. And then, of course, so much of the surfaces of the outside of the shipwrecks have now become a beautiful substrate for corals and sponges to make their homes on and reclaim it as an artificial reef.
This wreck, because it is so popular and it's very well known in the dive community, there are a lot of divers here. And soon that might not be an option for divers to actually go and see.
There's hundreds and hundreds of divers that dive on this site every year. And unfortunately, the attention that the Thistlegorm has received from recreational scuba divers has actually significantly contributed to its degradation. And also having mooring lines from a lot of the dive boats more directly onto the ship, parts of it have actually started to collapse.
The future divers of the world may not have the opportunity to see this wreck because it may just deteriorate or be so unsafe. For us, having the opportunity to go in and actually explore with everything still intact, for the most part, was an amazing experience.
It's not always going to be there. So I think that was like a reminder for me to really not take this moment for granted and to really soak it all up and get to see it all while we still can.
I'm not much of a history buff, but diving the Thistlegorm made me want to learn more about the history of that region and about what happened to the ship and why it sunk.
It's the best dive I've ever done, probably the best dive I will ever do. It has just been a pure highlight.